Welcome to the next episode of our podcast about disinformation in Europe. Today we want to talk about Ukraine and its people whose courage and determination we have all learned to admire, I think, in the last couple of months. If we think back to February, you might remember that Putin gave a bizarre speech about his personal views on history only 3 days before Russia illegally invaded Ukraine. And as we want to debunk myths and fight disinformation in this podcast, we are going to talk about Ukraine's history here today. Of course, we don't have enough time to cover all of Ukraine's history in sufficient detail, but we want to give you an overview because I'm sure most of us didn't learn about this in school. So I guess you can see this episode more as an invitation to learn more about Ukraine's history because it's actually very, very interesting. And I am very happy to say that our guest today is Dr. Olena Palko. She works at the Department of History of the University in Basel. Welcome, Olena. And actually, the first thing I want to ask you, why do you think Putin talked about Ukraine's history in his speech so shortly before the war?
First of all, thank you for the invitation, and I'm really happy and proud to be here with you and to share my thoughts about Ukraine's history and indeed how history became weaponized and politicized in the context of today's war in Ukraine. And actually, you mentioned this infamous speech by Putin just before the invasion, but Putin started weaponizing history long before that. In the context of war, we can say that ever since 2014, Putin, or the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, was trying to use history as a weapon of war, as a means of propaganda, and as kind of from highly politicized and ideologized way. And on numerous occasions, he referred to history to say that Ukraine has never existed, that Ukraine has always been part of Russia, that Ukrainians and Russians are the same people, and basically trying to go as far back as to the Middle Ages, to the history of Kievan Rus, about which I guess we will talk today as well. And it is, and this is why it's very important to speak about history to understand the present, because it's not only Russia that actually is using history as a weapon to reframe or kind of to reinvent history, but at the same time, Ukraine and Ukrainians, they also refer to history, to this historical heritage, to finding to use it as a source of resilience. So and this is why history becomes kind of an instrument from both sides. On the one hand, it is a means of it is another form of it is another weapon, but from Ukrainian side it is the source of resilience and this continuity that Ukrainian people refer to. That's why I'm very happy to speak about history and past and present.
Talking about Ukrainian history, we would like to start with the name Rus that you already mentioned. So where does this name come from and how was it used historically?
Thank you. It's a very good question, and I don't really have a definite answer because this is this terminology is highly debated, and there is no agreement among historians what the term Rus or the name Rus actually mean, and it can be used to define different phenomena. On the one hand, it can be used to define those tribes that lived on the territory, what is more or less today's Ukraine, Moldova, Russia, and Belarus. And in this context, the term Rus was already used in the 10th century Ukrainian chronicle, A Tale of Bygone Years, or Повесть временных лет. And Rus there was used to define the group of people residing on those territories. But at the same time, as I've already mentioned, the term Rus can be used to describe the territory, the lands, or Ruski, so the lands of those people of Rus. And this was more or less equal to the spread of Christianity, that is Ruska Vira or Christianity, as opposed to Islam of the Ottoman Empire. So everything beyond Crimea, so to say, was the land of Rus. And lastly, we can use the term Rus to define the statehood, this Kievan Rus, which is the form of statehood, which is also known as Kievan Rus, centered around Kiev, and which at its largest extent occupied the territory of today's Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, partly even Poland, and all the way up to Gulf of Finland and Lake Ladoga. So this is kind of different understanding of Rus. And this is actually very interesting and important to highlight that the adjective Ruski should not be confused with Russian. And this is why this is perhaps an anecdote, but it's funny that after the launch of this full-scale invasion in Poland, there was this attempt to change the name of their famous Ruski Pierogi Ruski into Ukrainian, although Ruski doesn't mean Russian, right? But it's kind of, I think this is the very common association that people have. But this adjective Ruski refers to this commonality of kind of the people and the lands, and as well Orthodox Christianity on those lands, on the territory of today's Ukraine. And I would perhaps mention that the term Russia only appeared in 1721, and this was used to the term Russia was used to define the lands of what was before Moscow.